Hi everyone. It's hard to believe that it is week 5 now already, isn't it? We only have 2 more weeks left to go. Doesn't it seem crazy? I hope you're finding the class useful and that you're learning some useful tricks and tips. I am still obviously behind in grading, but that's my goal tomorrow is to get everything caught up and then you guys know where you stand. So if you're missing anything, please take the opportunity to check out the grade book, and then anything you're missing, just go ahead and turn it in. So the assignments can be a bit staggered as far as when they're due. My preference is that you guys do them the next week because that way you get more out of it. But if something doesn't exactly apply right away, then I'd much prefer that you do what you need to do to have this be the most useful to you. So we've hinted on this before with regards to turning reading from a passive into an active exercise. And part of the trick of this is to engage your brain so that you are paying attention and not just rereading things 20 times because you're not paying attention and your brain's not cueing in on what's going on. So what we're going to focus on today are some tips and techniques to turn things more into an active reading exercise. And this won't be a super long lecture, but I'm hoping you guys get enough out of it that it's useful to you. I did forget to mention, I will be in my office this week, Monday morning, up until about 1:30, let's say, in the afternoon. But if you guys need to see me, please send me an email and we'll work out a time that we can chat, okay? So I'd also love it if you guys would check in again with me. I just want to make sure everything's going okay for you. So as you're turning the reading into an active exercise, these are just some suggestions, and I can tell you they do work because I use them all the time. So reviewing all the chapter headings and subheadings. Okay, what this is doing is giving your brain sort of a preview on what to expect. Glance over the pictures, charts, or graphs. This is particularly important for science books. Okay, do not just blank out because of the fact you come up against a figure. Okay, and it looks complicated. The first thing you do is you look at the axes, figure out what they're trying to tell you, and then once you actually do that, you can kind of get the gist of what's going to go on in that section that you're reading. Don't forget to read any bold or italicized words. Make sure you understand them. If you are studying, this is a great time to start making some note cards. Okay, that definitely usually gives you a cue in on what to expect. Don't forget to read the chapter summary and definitely review any end of chapter questions. So remember, these are not just there for your health. These are meant to be useful to you and give you some areas to focus on. And many instructors do check this over, and we do use this very often, so don't forget that. So once you've actually previewed the text, you want to make a list of questions that you want to find the answer to as you read. And so you might be thinking, how in the world do you do this? Well, by the time you've actually previewed the chapter, you have a pretty good idea of what's going on. And then once you actually make a list of questions, what's going to happen is your brain's going to look for those answers, okay? And then once it can actually find those answers, then it kind of cues in. And once again, that's going to help you remember that particular section, ultimately, which will help you retain it, hopefully for the exam and so forth. Once you guys have actually gone through the chapter headings and subheadings and so forth, the next thing you want to do is to take your list of questions and then answer them, okay, while you're previewing the text. And then additionally, try and predict the answers, okay? So, and then if you find out if you're right, excellent. But you find out that you're wrong, go back and figure out why. The more you engage your brain, the easier it is going to be to remember all this information. Read aloud. I'm not kidding. This works, okay? So I'll never forget that I had a roommate that thought I was completely crazy in college because I used to read my notes out loud. But that's what would help solidify it into my mind. So it would take things from short-term memory and stick it into long-term memory. So reading aloud definitely makes a difference, and it will help you remember things, okay? Then develop a picture in your mind of the concepts presented. Okay, when you actually visualize the information, concepts or material, and then it makes it much easier for you to remember. Depending upon what subject you're taking and what you're struggling with, it can be a bit of a challenge to sometimes picture everything. But don't forget, there's a whole bunch of resources out there online now that can help you, okay? And don't forget to use those online resources. I definitely cannot suggest that enough. We didn't have those back in my day, and I totally hate saying that, but it's true. So we did not have, like Khan Academy. We didn't have Sal to explain things to us. We didn't have Bozeman Biology or the Amoeba Sisters, and these are all biology, potentially related topics, I know, but that's because that's what I'm most familiar with. But there's a whole lot of stuff out there now that you guys can use. And the more ways you read things and the more information you're exposed to, the more likely you are to remember this, okay? So don't forget that. Make use of what exists for you. So, one of the more controversial techniques, and this is one that I'm going to admit I used all the time, is to highlight. Okay. So, think about what happens when you actually highlight something. Does that truly mean that you know it? So, the research has actually shown, again, because we're basing the suggestions in class on research and what scientific research shows, that highlighting doesn't hurt you, but it doesn't necessarily help you. And part of the reason is once you've highlighted something, your brain might click it in there and think, okay, I already know this without actually knowing it. Okay. So highlighting itself is a bit controversial. My suggestion to you would be to maybe take notes in the corner. Okay. Remember, we talked previously a little bit about scribbling all over your book and scribbling all over your notes. Okay. I really think that that's a useful technique to use. And highlighting, I would use it very sparingly, just realizing that maybe you need to go back then and relearn those to make sure you've actually got it down pat until you really, really feel comfortable with it. So once you've actually finished reading a text or passage, my next suggestion is for you to sit down with someone else and tell them what you read, okay? Tell them what you learned from the text. Now, my poor husband has listened to more things and more information than he has ever wanted to know about certain topics that I'm not really sure he's all that interested in. But to be honest, if I know that if I can explain it to him, it's clicking into my brain and I'm going to remember it to be able to explain it to someone else, okay? And so, bribe a roommate with studying time for one another, or, bribe a friend, or I'm a big believer in using coffee, as an incentive or something like that. So, or buy them lunch if they'll just sit there and listen to you so you can explain things briefly to them. And that's part of studying. And then they can try that technique on you as well. And so ultimately, the hope is that if you do that, you'll remember it. And so you'll remember it that much better and then be ready to go. Okay. And then don't forget to review and then to review again and review again, at least within a day of your initial reading. Okay. So spend 20 to 30 minutes, depending upon the amount of material that you cover. All right. Where you review the notes, the information you learned, recite the main points in the topics. Remember, you're trying to build those neural networks and you're trying to build those chunks because that's what's going to help you to, take this information and stick it into your long-term memory from your short-term memory. So let's talk about how to deal with reading that might be a bit more challenging. So everybody has their material that they love and things that they're most interested in. And then we also have things that we are really not super enthused about reading. Okay, that's normal. Personally, I have the utmost respect for people that can handle accounting, but I can't even balance a checkbook to save my life. And it's just because of the fact that that's not what I'm particularly interested in. Okay, so you're going to have topics that you're more thrilled about, and then you're going to have topics that you're less thrilled about reading. But the reality is that you still have to get through it. Okay, so my suggestion is to mark it up. All right, now we just said this in the previous slide too. Mark all over that and make sure that you've actually got everything down pat. Okay, take breaks. If you're starting to not pay attention and you're starting to daydream, just take a break. Okay, because it's not effective anyway. And so switch to another topic or get up and walk around or go for a quick jog or something. Take a bathroom break or whatever you need to do. Anything to sort of get your brain so it has a slight distraction so it can go back and focus again. Okay. And once again, the web, so many good things out there. Find different ways that something is explained for the topics that you're having a particularly hard time with. And rereading. Okay. Now, it's not as if scientists will first dive in and read a paper and then they instantly know it. Okay, there is nothing wrong with having to reread passages. That's completely normal. So when you reread the passages again and again, you're going to get to know it that much better as long as you're truly trying to observe the information and absorb it, okay, rather than just scanning over it and not retaining it. So rereading things is very crucial. I'll never forget when I first read my first science paper. When I got to grad school, I had never read a scientific paper in my life. I had, but it wasn't like the ones I was reading for school. And so I had to read that thing like 20 times before I understood it. And it was basically a dive in, and I had to explain it to a class. And so I was like super stressed out because I had all this stuff to do and all these things to explain to someone else. And holy cow, I had to reread that thing so many times to really understand. I figured it out, but that's normal. Don't forget to connect your paragraphs to one another. Okay, so you should be able to definitely do that without any issues. So how does this connect to the previous paragraph? How does this connect to the paragraph afterwards? Okay, so again, keeping it active. And when you really start to zone out, you're sick of everything, just change positions, move around. Okay, it might sound goofy, But if I'm having a really tough time reading, some chemistry or something along those lines, I used to lay on my stomach on a beanbag chair. Okay, and for whatever reason, that was the position that I focused best. Made no sense whatsoever, all right, but for whatever reason, it worked for me. So, move around, shuffle around, change positions, okay, change locations if you have to. Don't let yourself get distracted from it to the point of where, you lose too much time. But if things really aren't clicking, then you've got to find a way to make it work. So this part is probably going to be frustrating to you, but the reality is faculty personalities and professor personalities are all over the map, okay? So we're all different, and every teacher and professor is different. Some weight their tests and quizzes heavily on what's in the textbook. Others never used a textbook, okay, and they rely entirely on lectures, truthfully. That tends to be my style. At the beginning of the semester, try and find out what exams will focus on. And it's a fair question to ask your instructor, where should I spend most of my time studying? Okay, so remember, it's not what you ask necessarily. It is partially, but it's also how you ask it. So don't ask what's going to be on the exam. Okay, it just gives us all a headache. But, ask, okay, so there's a lot of material here. So, what should I focus most of my time on? All right, and see what they actually suggest. And this tells you how to be more efficient. Okay, and you can also ask them, is it going to be information in the lectures or the textbook or a balance of both? That's also an okay and fair question, and shouldn't make them too grumpy or anything along those lines. So definitely, we've said it before, go to your instructor and, take time to, talk with them and then see what they find to be the most important. Okay, so just to sort of wrap things up, to make reading more efficient and help you retain information longer, reading aloud makes a huge difference. Isolate yourself, find a room, that you can go be by yourself and just read everything out loud because it really does work. At the very least, give it a try this week, okay? And then secondly, to discuss what you've read with other people. All right, now don't forget to put things in your own words as well. You want to, make sure the meanings stay the same, but by turning things around so that it's actually in your own words, this is what's going to actually help you to remember the information. So I know that this week's lecture is pretty short. And part of the reason is because I've noticed that we are missing some assignments from you guys. And I want to make sure you have time to get those in, okay? So please take a few moments to get caught up this week. Additionally, if you need anything, okay, anything at all, please send me an email. We will definitely make time to chat. I want to make sure everything's going okay for you, okay? And so send me an email and let me know what I can do to help. And if you need to meet, by all means, come on by, and I will do the best I can to make sure everything's going okay. All right? So I wish you all a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon.